Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I just wanted peace. A house by the river, fishing at dawn, no bosses, no rules. But peace didn't last. First came the letters, then the threats, and then strangers on my land. The HOA thought they could take what was mine. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Now, this war will become their worst nightmare. I never wanted trouble. After years of service in the military, all I wanted was a quiet life, away from the noise, the rules, and the constant power struggles. I found that peace on a secluded piece of land along the river, nestled just outside the borders of an upscale housing development. It wasn't much, just a small house, a sturdy dock, and a fishing boat, but it was mine. Every plank, every nail, every inch of that land belonged to me, and I intended to enjoy it in solitude. The mornings were my favorite. The river would be still, mist rolling off its surface like a ghostly veil, the air crisp with the scent of pine and fresh water. I'd sit on my dock, coffee in one hand, fishing rod in the other, watching the sun creep over the treetops. Here, I didn't have to answer to anyone. No commanders barking orders, no bureaucrats breathing down my neck. Just me, the river, and the occasional bald eagle swooping down for its own breakfast. That peace, however, was short-lived. It started subtly at first. Letters in my mailbox, stamped with an official-looking HOA seal. At first, I assumed they had the wrong address. My land had been privately owned for decades, long before that manicured cookie-cutter neighborhood sprang up across the way. I had never signed any agreements, never paid any dues, never attended their meetings. So, I ignored the letters. But the letters didn't stop. Then came the visitors. HOA members dressed like real estate agents appeared at my front door with fake smiles and condescending tones. They weren't asking, they were demanding that I comply with the aesthetic standards of the community, as if my land had somehow been absorbed into their plastic suburbia, demanding that I limit my outdoor activities to preserve the neighborhood's tranquility. And the most laughable demand? That I cease all fishing operations immediately, as it was allegedly detrimental to the local ecosystem. I laughed in their faces, told them in no uncertain terms that they had no authority here. That's when their smiles faded. That's when the letters became threats. The next thing I knew, my property was suddenly under scrutiny. Unmarked cars began idling near my land, taking photos. I found warning notices pinned to my fence, citing bogus zoning violations. I even caught some of their people walking my perimeter, clipboards in hand, as if they were appraising something they already considered theirs. But I wasn't a man who backed down. The way I saw it, these HOA types were just another breed of bureaucrats, petty tyrants who thrived on control, who couldn't stand the idea that someone wasn't bending to their will. They thought they could scare me, intimidate me, break me down with paperwork and legal jargon. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I should have seen what was coming, because when bullies don't get their way, they escalate. And the HOA wasn't just going to settle for letters and warnings. They were about to make this personal. The first time I saw them on my land, I thought maybe they were lost. 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, stood near my dock, their polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth. The woman stood in the center, blonde bob perfectly in place, arms folded across an expensive beige blazer. She exuded the kind of arrogance you could smell from a mile away. The 2 men flanked her like obedient attack dogs, one with a clipboard, the other with a camera slung around his neck. I walked toward them, fishing rod still in hand, the morning sun casting long shadows across the riverbank. "Can I help you?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The woman, Karen of course, gave me a tight-lipped smile, the kind that barely concealed the contempt behind it. "Good morning, Mr. Rivera," she said, voice dripping with artificial politeness. "I'm Karen Holmes, president of the Riverbend Homeowners Association. These are my colleagues, Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Ellis. We're here to discuss some concerns regarding your property." I arched an eyebrow. "Concerns?" Karen gestured toward my dock, then my boat. "We've received multiple complaints from residents about disruptions coming from your lot, noise, unsightly structures, and, most concerning, unauthorized fishing activities." I let out a sharp laugh. "Unauthorized? This is my land, my dock, my boat, and I'll fish whenever I damn well please." Dunbar, the clipboard guy, cleared his throat. "Technically, Mr. Rivera, this land is adjacent to Riverbend Estates, and as such, It should comply with the neighborhood's environmental and aesthetic guidelines. Should, I repeated, narrowing my eyes. It doesn't, because it's not part of your damn HOA. Karen's fake smile never wavered. We believe there's been a misunderstanding. This area has been designated for community preservation. Your fishing activities, along with the modifications you've made to the shoreline, are problematic. We're willing to work with you to bring everything up to standard. She spoke as if she was doing me a favor, as if I should be grateful. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Let me make something clear, Karen. My property isn't part of your little kingdom. I don't pay your fees. I don't follow your rules, and I sure as hell don't answer to you. Mr. Ellis, the camera guy, finally spoke. We're not here to start trouble, he said, though the way his fingers twitched over his camera suggested otherwise. We're just here to document the violations. I looked between the three of them. Violations. Dunbar lifted his clipboard. Failure to adhere to HOA landscaping standards, unauthorized shoreline modifications, potential safety hazards regarding the dock's structure, and, of course, excessive and unregulated fishing. I barked out a laugh. Unregulated fishing? You people really think you own the damn river, don't you? Karen's smile finally faltered. This is a warning, Mr. Rivera, she said, voice losing its forced pleasantry. We'd hate for this to escalate. I took another step forward, my grip tightening around the handle of my fishing rod. Escalate how exactly? Dunbar shifted uncomfortably. Ellis's hand twitched near his camera again. Karen, however, didn't back down. Let's just say that we have ways of handling non-compliance, she said. You might want to consider working with us. It would be easier for everyone involved. A threat. That's what this was. A thinly veiled corporate-speak HOA-wrapped threat. I smiled. Karen, I said slowly, enjoying the way her name tasted like venom on my tongue. You and your boys are trespassing. If you don't leave right now, I'll be forced to assume you're here to cause trouble. And I don't take kindly to troublemakers on my land. Karen's nostrils flared, but she didn't move. Neither did her goons. So I took another step forward, this time raising my fishing rod slightly, just enough to make it clear that I was done playing their little games. Leave. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Karen let out a sharp breath through her nose and motioned to her lackeys. This isn't over, she said, turning on her heel. I watched them march back to their expensive SUV, Dunbar furiously scribbling notes while Ellis snapped a few more pictures. The tires kicked up dust as they sped away, but I knew this wasn't the last I'd see of them. No, this was just the beginning. The real fight was coming, and they had no idea what kind of war they were about to start. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid, a simple mistake, a coincidence. But as the days passed, it became obvious. This wasn't paranoia, this was war. The first sign was my dock. I woke up one morning, coffee in hand, ready to cast my line into the river when I noticed something was off. One of the wooden planks was loose, nearly pried from its place. Not weathered or worn down, tampered with. Someone had been out there in the night, trying to make it look like an accident waiting to happen, a step in the wrong place, and I could have fallen straight into the water. Then, a few days later, my boat was untied. Not drifting, not nudged by the current, completely unmoored. The knots I tied every damn day weren't loose. Someone had undone them. If I hadn't noticed in time, the boat would have been carried downriver, maybe even lost for good. I installed cameras that very night, but that wasn't enough for them. The next morning, I found broken glass scattered along the riverbank, right where I usually wade into the water. Not a bottle accidentally left behind, shards deliberately placed, hidden beneath the mud. If I had walked barefoot, I would have torn up my feet. I checked the footage from my cameras. A shadowy figure, tall, broad-shouldered, creeping along my fence line in the dead of night. The quality wasn't great, but I recognized the build, one of Karen's lackeys. That night, I stayed awake, armed, watching, waiting, and when I finally heard the rustling near my dock around 2 a.m., I didn't hesitate. I stepped outside, my flashlight slicing through the darkness. Two figures froze in the beam of light. HOA patrol, their hands hovered near my dock, caught in the act. Looks like I found some trespassers, I said, voice low, dangerous. They bolted, but I wasn't about to let them off that easy. I knew they'd run straight back to Karen, and I was right. Less than 24 hours after I caught her goons sneaking around my dock, I woke up to something much worse, police sirens outside my house. I stepped onto my porch, shirtless, coffee in hand, as 3 squad cars pulled into my driveway. The sight of half a dozen officers climbing out, hands hovering near their belts, should have made my stomach sink. But I'd been through worse. I leaned against the railing, waiting for the circus act to begin. Then I saw her, Karen, standing beside one of the officers, arms crossed, face twisted into the kind of self-satisfied smirk you only see on people who think they've already won. "Mr. Rivera?" one of the cops called out, stepping forward. "We need to have a word." I sighed, setting my coffee down on the porch railing. "What's the charge, officer?" The officer, a tall guy with a shaved head and a hardened look, pulled out a notepad. "We received multiple complaints about illegal activities on this property, namely unlicensed commercial fishing, environmental violations, and—" He hesitated, like he didn't even believe the next part. "Possession of hazardous materials." I blinked. Hazardous materials. Karen stepped forward then, holding a stack of papers like a damn lawyer in court. "That's right, officer. Mr. Rivera has been engaging in unregulated fishing operations, which is a clear violation of the Clean Water Act. He has also been storing dangerous chemicals on site, which could pose a risk to the community." I had to laugh. "And what exactly do you think I'm storing?" "Napalm." Karen ignored me. Furthermore, the HOA has documented numerous complaints from concerned residents about late-night activities, loud noises, and suspicious behavior. That was rich, considering it was her people sneaking around in the dark. I crossed my arms. "This is private property. I don't answer to the HOA, and I sure as hell don't answer to Karen. Unless you have an actual warrant, I suggest you get off my land." The officer hesitated. He knew this was a waste of time. Karen, sensing she was losing ground, played her final card. "Mr. Rivera resisted HOA security last night," she said smoothly. "2 of our community patrolmen reported that he physically threatened them." "That's assault." I exhaled through my nose, trying to keep my temper in check. If I had actually assaulted them, they wouldn't have walked away. The officer's lips twitched. He knew I was telling the truth. But procedure was procedure. "Mr. Rivera," he said, tucking away his notepad, "I need you to come with us for some questioning." I knew fighting it here wouldn't do me any favors, so I smirked at Karen, grabbed my jacket, and climbed into the squad car. If she thought this would scare me into submission, she was about to be very disappointed. The ride to the station was short and uneventful. They didn't cuff me because, deep down, the cops knew this was bullshit. When we arrived, I sat through the motions. Basic questioning, a formality more than anything. They didn't have any real charges, just a stack of HOA complaints that meant nothing in a court of law. 2 hours later, I walked out of the station without so much as a fine. Karen had wasted everyone's time, but that was never her goal. She wanted to make a statement, to show me that she could make my life difficult. That's when I decided to make a statement of my own. I drove straight home, still running hot from the interrogation, expecting at least a few days of quiet before the next round of HOA nonsense. I was wrong. By the time I turned onto the dirt road leading to my property, my headlights caught 3 figures standing near my dock. Even from a distance, I could see the gleam of flashlights and the reflective patches on their shoulders. HOA security. These weren't just Karen's little clipboard-carrying lapdogs. This was their so-called community patrol, the ones she sent when she wanted to scare someone. Big mistake. I killed the engine and stepped out of the truck, the crunch of gravel under my boots breaking the night's silence. The moment the 3 men spotted me, they tensed up. One of them, a thick-necked bastard with a buzz cut, stepped forward like he was about to give me orders. "Evening, Mr. Rivera," he said, voice dripping with smug authority. "We're conducting a property compliance inspection." I scoffed. "You're trespassing." The second man, a wiry guy with shifty eyes, smirked. "HOA regulations state that we have the right to conduct safety inspections on all neighborhood-adjacent properties." I took a slow step forward, fists clenching at my sides. "This isn't an HOA property." Buzzcut kept his ground. "Maybe not officially, but let's not be difficult. We've had multiple complaints about this dock being a hazard. Might have to file an official report, have it condemned." "Which would mean you'd have to remove it." Shifty eyes finished for him. Now I understood. This wasn't about intimidation anymore. They weren't just taking pictures, leaving notes, or making empty threats. They were here to tear my dock down. The third guy, a silent, hulking figure standing behind them, had a crowbar in his hand. That was all the confirmation I needed. My blood went hot. "You touch that dock," I said slowly, dangerously, "and you'll regret it." Buzzcut let out a condescending chuckle. "Look, man, no need to get aggressive. We're just doing our job. You're already on thin ice after that stunt last night." I took another step forward. "Last warning, get off my land." Shifty Eyes reached for something at his belt. Maybe a radio, maybe something else. I didn't wait to find out. I closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the nearest wooden post. The air left his lungs in a choked wheeze. Buzzcut moved fast, swinging at me with a cheap sucker punch, but I was faster. I ducked, driving my elbow into his ribs before smashing my fist into his jaw. He stumbled back, cursing, hand going to his mouth. And then there was the big guy. Crowbar in hand, he came at me like a freight train. I dodged left at the last second, but he still clipped my shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down my arm. The guy was strong, stronger than the other two, but strength means nothing if you don't know how to use it. I let him take another wild swing, watching his balance shift. Then I moved in, grabbing his wrist, twisting hard until the crowbar clattered to the ground. Before he could react, I drove my knee into his stomach, knocking the air out of him. He collapsed to his knees, wheezing. Shifty Eyes was still coughing against the post. Buzzcut was spitting blood onto the dirt, and the big guy was down for the count. I stepped back, breathing hard, flexing my sore shoulder. "Get up," I growled. "Get the hell out of here before I decide to call the real cops." Buzzcut wiped his mouth, glaring at me. "You're making a mistake, man." I picked up the crowbar he had dropped and tossed it into the river. "The only mistake I made," I said, "was letting you walk away." They got the message. One by one, they staggered back toward their vehicle. Buzzcut hesitated at the door, locking eyes with me one last time. "Karen's not going to let this go," he muttered. I smirked. Neither am I. The SUV's tires spun in the dirt as they peeled out of my driveway. I watched them go, heart still pounding in my chest. This was no longer just an HOA dispute. This was war, and I was done playing defense. I expected retaliation. Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds and walk away. No, people like her escalate, and sure enough, she did. But this time, she didn't send her little patrol monkeys to vandalize my property or leave more empty threats. This time, she tried to steal my land. It started with a letter, an official-looking document, thick with legal jargon, delivered straight to my mailbox. Notice of property reevaluation. I skimmed it. HOA boundary adjustments, jurisdictional expansion, terms like annexation and revised districting stood out like flashing neon signs. And at the bottom, in that smug, looping signature, Karen Holmes, HOA president. I clenched my jaw. I'd seen plenty of dirty tactics in my life, but this was next level. She was trying to rewrite the property lines, trying to legally absorb my land into HOA jurisdiction. If this scam went through, they'd have the right to fine me, regulate me, and eventually force me out. I took the papers inside, sat down at my desk, and started digging. The more I read, the angrier I got. The document cited community planning records that didn't exist, zoning laws that had never applied to my land, and, most damning of all, a list of property owner signatures approving the change. My name was on that list. Forged. That was the final straw. Karen thought she could play this like a quiet legal battle. She thought she could drown me in paperwork and push me off my own damn land. She was about to regret underestimating me. Karen had crossed a line. Vandalism, harassment, and threats were one thing. Forgery and land theft. That was a whole different game. And I was about to flip the damn board. I wasted no time. The next morning, I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Michael Grant, ex-prosecutor, now a real estate and property rights bulldog. He listened as I laid everything out. The fake documents, the boundary fraud, the forged signatures, mine included. By the time I was done, he looked ready to tear someone apart. "This is criminal," he said, eyes dark. "We're not just talking about a civil case here. This is fraud, forgery, and attempted property theft." "Damn right it is," I muttered, "and I want her nailed to the wall for it." Within 48 hours, we filed a lawsuit against the HOA, backed by concrete evidence. I documented everything, the fake complaints, the harassment, the security footage of her lackeys sneaking onto my land. But the real bombshell, Michael got a forensic analyst to examine the forged signatures. The verdict? Undeniable fraud. That was all the authorities needed. When the sheriff's department showed up at Karen's door with an arrest warrant, half the damn neighborhood gathered to watch. She screeched and protested, but the evidence was overwhelming. Forgery, fraud, attempted property seizure, trespassing. Her smug HOA empire collapsed in a single afternoon. As she was shoved into the back of a squad car, she turned and locked eyes with me. "You think this is over?" she spat, her voice shaking. I smirked. "For you? Yeah, it is." The day Karen was hauled off in cuffs, the war officially ended. But victory didn't come without scars. The HOA tried to distance themselves from her, pretending they had no idea what she was up to. But Michael wasn't about to let them off the hook. The lawsuit continued, and soon enough, the entire board was exposed for their corruption. Fines were issued. Board members resigned in disgrace. Riverbend Estates was forced to pay damages, and the HOA's power crumbled overnight. But even with them gone, the damage had been done. My dock had been vandalized. My property had been under siege for months. I barely slept for weeks, always waiting for the next move, the next attack. Even now, every time I hear a car slow down near my driveway, my muscles tense out of habit. Freedom had a price. One afternoon, while fixing a broken section of my fence, one of my neighbors walked up, a guy I barely knew, someone who'd kept his head down while Karen ran the show. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," he muttered. "A lot of us should have spoken up sooner." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, you should have." He looked down, ashamed, but I didn't need his apology. I didn't fight this war for thanks. I fought it because no one takes my land. That night, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, staring out at the quiet river. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the next battle. I had won. The land was mine, always had been, always would be. And if anyone ever tried to take it from me again, they'd regret it.